All right. This is that moment of truth. That moment of truth where I wait for the internet to wake up. I don't have. There we go. Oh, did YouTube win? Did YouTube win? YouTube won. Okay. Wait for it. Did YouTube's about to officially win. Yeah, YouTube won this one. You guys know I have to wait until I see it. And I know there's a bit of a delay, but I don't have an executive producer, so blah 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 blah. We got to wait for it to load in so that I know we're online and everything is good. And I always mention who wins. Now today, Twitter always wins. Twitter is always first. But today it's always between YouTube and Rockfin. Today YouTube was second. Anyway, what's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and hi to everybody in the future. It's Tuesday. We didn't have a show yesterday because I was out of town on family business, and it was good to see my folks. But anyway, we're back. Happy Tuesday. I'm super excited for today's episode. Shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. Our friends over at Indie Left. Indie Left is the only place to find all the content creators you know and love. What they do is they have a big old curated list that they update twice a day. Yours truly made their theme song. And if you want your own theme song, patreon.com/Ron Placone. To learn more about them and to subscribe to their Discord, they're dancing over at the Discord, independentleft.media. Again, that is independentleft.media. So, guys, I'm so excited to talk to my guest today. As you know, we have been talking, well, first of all, Municipal Broadband, which is city-owned internet, making the internet a utility. That is a big part of the mission of this show. And here in California, where I live, there's a broadband proposal that is $7 billion. And if they move on it, if they act on it, this could really revolutionize broadband, not just in California, but the rest of the country is going to probably follow suit as well. This could be a huge, historic opportunity for the future of the internet, and that's not an embellishment. And this gentleman is one of the leaders in that movement. He is a senior advisor over at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Cory Doctorow also involved with EFF. Shahid Buttar also involved with EFF. They're one of the earliest digital rights organizations in the country, and they do amazing things. And this gentleman is leading that fight on California's municipal broadband plan. So he knows pretty much everything, all the ins and outs about it. And we're going to get to ask about all the nooks and crannies today. So please welcome to the show, Ernesto Falcon. Ernesto, how are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So let's dive right in because I have so much to ask you about this. But let's start out basic for anyone who maybe hasn't been following this. So here's what's going on. There is a Governor Newsom's budget proposes historic investment in public fiber broadband, $7 billion. So what exactly is going on there? Let's just start very basic. What exactly is this proposal? What would it do?
Yeah, so in the middle of the year, June 15th, the legislature has approved the budget of the state that the governor gets to kind of have firsthand drafting on the front end. And we have this really kind of crazy convergence of a unique opportunity in that the Congress approved a rescue plan in March. They gave a lot of money for broadband infrastructure to a lot of the states to decide. And the state of California itself has a surplus. And so that surplus has to be spent in some way. And it's a very sizable surplus. We're really kind of, we kind of came out of the pandemic in a good place. And now it's time to choose where we invest to recover and remedy the problems we had from the pandemic. So from those two sources of funds, the governor has identified $7 billion that could be invested on explicitly building out broadband infrastructure, with a vast majority of it going towards the public sector building it. There's some private grants here and there in the overall package, but more like 2/3 plus of this money is going specifically to government cooperatives and around profit or alternative entities to build the internet infrastructure, and it's primarily going to be fiber based in that respect.
So in short, like the really just short summary of that is, this is money we have. This is surplus money that the state has. People are in a pandemic, and this is just one of the many investments that we have to make. So when people say, oh, how can we possibly afford this? How can we possibly do better than the garbage big cable offers us? Well, we have the money to pay for it right this very second. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the specifics. So here's something from the article the EFF put out. To make local efforts economically viable, the governor's budget envisions a long-term financing program accessible by any municipality, cooperative, or local nonprofit engaged in building local fiber infrastructure that connects to the state's open access network. So if I'm missing anything, correct me, but that basically means this is going to be a state-run municipal network. Is that correct? And it's going to be cities and municipalities building this out.
So it's a combination of two. It's like a partnership in the sense of, there are places that you could probably access what's called the middle mile. So if you think about the infrastructure, you could think about like kind of the freeway system, and that the freeway system that connects our cities, that's the middle mile part of the internet. And then there's the last mile, which is the part that goes right to your house or your business. And that is the part that's most challenging. And so the state would build the freeway part, right, the highway portion of the internet, make sure there's fiber capacity that gets right up to your community. And then the community will then have a separate pot of money or separate account that they would devise up their own plan and access in order to come up with their own local solution. So whether they decide to go with a private player or build it out themselves or go with a cooperative or some sort of local ownership model, the options are all there. And exactly as you said, broadband policy has been plagued with not enough money to solve the problem. We don't have that right now in California. We are talking about the kind of money, but we really can't have a fiber connection to every single person. And so, there's a lot of mischief from the incumbent carriers to try and derail that, to essentially kind of light that money on fire so it doesn't get the job done. And I think the strong reliance on the public sector to deploy is essential. It's essential because they're motivated to do this in lots of parts of the states, or lots of parts of the state. I mean,
so the big cable companies are basically fighting this because this would revolutionize the way internet works in California, and they don't like that. That would kind of disrupt their current business model. Is that correct? And what have they done so far?
So cable and AT&T in particular have both waged pretty strong opposition to the state really taking a direct hand in building out this infrastructure. And I guess you could say, from the cable perspective, it's the fact that they have a monopoly in most places. So if you were to build a high capacity alternative, it's probably going to be cheaper than you're paying for now for Comcast or Charter, depending where you live. And it's going to be faster than what they offer too. And so their only counter response there is for them to invest more in their network and lower their prices. That just means less profit, and they just don't want to do that, right? It is more valuable to them to fight this to the death, to prevent it from happening with whatever money you want to throw lobbying-wise. You can spend millions of dollars lobbying on against this right now. And that'll be more profitable for them to sustain the monopoly versus losing this fight and then have them turn around and figure out the X number of billion plus they're going to have to invest in their alliance to compete with fiber.
So, yeah, I mean, it's so amazing that municipal broadband, I mean, they put out that study a couple years ago that just revealed that municipal broadband has 100% success rate at being cheaper and better than what big cable is offering, which shows to the world. I mean, I'm not, a tech expert as far as building the actual infrastructure. I just know there's a lot of contractors who are that work with y'all and other organizations. And it's not necessarily rocket science. It's just these big cable companies don't care because profit's their main agenda, not actually making a quality product. But
the thing that really cuts against their willingness to get to everyone, because it is profitable in most places, with the exception of like deep rural territory, that you can make some sort of profit over getting it to everyone, is the amount of time they're willing to wait for their investment to kind of pay itself back. So your big nationals operate under a 3 to 5 year window of return on investments. Even your major cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco, you can't make that back everywhere in the city. But if you start thinking like a municipality or a small private player who says, you know what, I'm fine if it takes 10 years for me to pay off all the debt. It's a solid product. People are going to buy it. Who's not going to pay for broadband for pretty much forever, right? And so they'll take this long-term view. And you just suddenly realize you can kind of do almost everywhere. And the municipalities in particular are kind of dangerous to cable in that they can look at this from 30 years. Like they can say, you know what, we'll take a 30-year mortgage type approach to covering everyone, as long as enough revenue is being generated from subscribers, which you don't need everyone to subscribe to it. You just need some places only a third of the city to pay for it, to pay for the whole thing, then suddenly they have a real problem, because then they couldn't, then they only have one route to keep up: either lose customers to a better, faster, cheaper service, or to invest the money they would have rather pocketed in profits to keep the customers they have.
So, from a real, just kind of basic place, what would this type of upgrade mean as far as just the quality of internet that California resident A will experience?
So I'd say off the bat, if you live in a market like me, I only have Comcast for my choice. You're probably looking to save, $50 or $60 or more per month in your broadband bill. I pay about 115 for a decent download and an okay upload, and I can get more, much more of that on both ends of that, particularly on the upload side, for easily half the price. And so, because I live in at East Bay, I live in a pretty densely populated, regular old city. So, on your average user, you're gonna save money and get faster service. I mean, that's kind of the big piece. I think long-term view, the communities they upgrade to these infrastructures, if you will, they just get a lot of options about what they can do about access. So we've lived through the pandemic, and the solution for broadband access has been to rent out a mobile hotspot and hand it to a household, and hope they can have a sufficient connection to share. If a kid has to go to school at the same time a parent has to work remotely, that failed everywhere. I mean, it barely worked, and lots of people had lots of issues. But that's all we could do, because there wasn't a way to just quickly just roll a line out to them. This is a multi-year effort. And so if you think down 10 years from now, if we can pass this today, 10 years from now, if you have something where a lot of people have to work from home, or the market's change where people work from home generally, you have the capacity to do that. And you have the capacity to look at the low-income part of the digital divide, the people who don't have the money to pay for broadband, and you can come up with free or really, really dirt cheap fast offerings, simply because you can aggregate your when you have a whole community served, adding portions of community to it do not cost a ton of money to do, and so you're able to do a lot more public services in that way, rather than kind of this really inferior option of mobile hotspots. Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is kind of the world's fastest ISP, and I would say the leader amongst municipalities, pretty much showed when the pandemic hit that community. What did they do? They basically gave 10,000 plus students free internet, free 100 symmetrical internet, 100 megabits down, 100 megabits up, for free for 10 years, at an average cost to the city about $3.50 per month per kid. And so that's a tiny cost.
It's so amazing.
That's the zero profit cost, right? Of a mature network that's been built and developed over many, many years, and if it has sufficient investments and a really solid subscriber base. Not every community can replicate exactly that, but you can get pretty close. Like, it won't be, it'll be vastly superior what you have today. I mean, I think that's what it really boils down to, is the internet and the speeds that you can get access to have gotten cheaper than ever. Yet that efficiency in the hardware and the technology has not been given to consumers, and it's a long past time.
And, for everybody who regularly watches this show, they are hearing me say this for the billionth time. And to them, I apologize. But again, these issues are grossly undercovered. So, it's something we need to reiterate until the public really catches on. Chattanooga, Tennessee, they got municipal broadband. They were very much an early adapter for a number of reasons. They have some of the best internet in the world. And guess where there's some of the most municipal broadband projects? Tennessee. Why? Because they all see what Chattanooga has, and they think, this is a good idea. We should all have this because it freaking works. But so now,
another place for people to look at, to be kind of surprised about what a municipal effort can do. Utah actually has the most municipal fiber networks in the country of all states. A very conservative state, actually has laws that Cable wrote to ban municipalities from selling broadband. And so what they did was simply say, okay, we can't sell broadband to people. Let's just build the wire. Let's just build the fiber wire, connect every single household, and we'll open it up so anyone who wants to resell off this, they're welcome to come. And you have a real revolution there, where you have a dozen small businesses selling gigabit services at somewhere in a range of $40, $50, $60, $70 a month, and they compete for customers based on customer service and kind of all kind of niceties around the service. And you have people who can start their own internet service provider business in those regions because the infrastructure is open for anyone to do that with now.
Which is almost like kind of how the whole thing started back in the day, right? Because I remember,
Back
I
to
mean, yeah, like, well, I just remember when I first got internet, which, I mean, I was a kid, my parents got it. I mean, I remember like the service that they used, it was just some guy who thought I could do this, and then eventually he got a pretty big customer base, and I'm pretty sure it was called MindSpring. And yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm pretty sure it's not around anymore, but that's almost like we're going back to how it started. But this is just a more, it's not dial up, obviously, and it's just, really revolutionizing the way we get this utility in our lives. So let's talk some of the politics around it, because there's a lot going on there, and y'all have been on top of it. So the governor says, hey, we got this $7 billion intended for broadband infrastructure. Here you go. And the legislature has been, well, we should sit on this. So what's going on there? Unpack this.
Yeah, so you don't have to approve the plan outright on June 15th, which is like the statutory deadline to establish the budget. And so a whole ton of but you could have, right? We could have been starting, today to begin the kind of the grand restructuring of the state in terms of access. We're not yet. And so what the legislature is going to agree to is to approve a $7 billion price tag for something, and that something is still being worked out. And so, I mentioned this earlier. There's ways. I often get this question: how much is enough money to solve the problem? And I said, well, you can do it the way we've been doing it so far, and it's infinite. The money is infinite cost. Getting any old service will do, any basic minimum speed, whatever can do it, we'll pay money to get that out there. Or you can have a finite amount of money that solves the problem for a generation at least, maybe two, which is just get a fiber line right out there and open it up and make it available to people to access the asset. Fiber just has this unique property of just its capacity is so far beyond our usage needs today and our likely usage needs for decades. So once you've got it there, you don't have to replace it. You don't have to find a new solution when people need more. You just got to build it. And so, what industry will come in and say, oh, you know what we need? We need this to help subsidize the cost of service. We don't need to build new stuff. We just need to lower the price tag. And so if you subsidize us to sell services more to people, we'll get it to more people connected to what we already built. We're doing that now with the emergency benefit stuff under the pandemic. And all they've really done with that is upsell people or figure out how to get you to buy something that's more expensive because you got a subsidy now that covers that cost. But they're not building anything new with that, and they're certainly not expanding the high capacity infrastructure to get to all people. So that's going to be the effort, I think, of a large part of this industry, is simply to push it out to more private grants and more private subsidies. That's your solution. That's what we've done for the last couple of decades, and we have what we have for that. What they do not want whatsoever is for the public sector, your local communities, to gain the expertise of building these networks and the know-how how to run them. Because what's going to happen then is we may not have to keep investing money anymore. You may just have your neighboring city saying, "Hey, we know how to build it. If you want us to help you, like, why don't we just come on over and we'll teach your people how to do this too." And then if you expand the knowledge of how to build and run these networks kind of ubiquitously throughout the state with lots of different local nonprofit or cooperative or local government solutions, you've suddenly built a lot of alternatives so that when the day comes again, particularly in the context of the pandemic and how that happened, when you need an emergency solution, you're like, hey, I need someone to help me solve this problem. You no longer only got Comcast and AT&T as your go-to only entities you can ask for help with, right? And so I think that's going to be that's the fight. That's the fight. The fight is whether or not the state is going to invest to grow and build the public model of broadband access with a large part of this money or not. And if we do, I think there are a huge number of county governments and local governments right now eager to try and do kind of replicate what's happening in Utah, replicate what's happening in Chattanooga. So the two models being either build it openly so anyone can use it, or just do direct service and sale of it directly to people like a utility in terms of electricity. And you enable both those, and you enable the options for people to kind of keep building, because the thing about Chattanooga, but we don't have as a problem here in California, is state law in Tennessee prevents Chattanooga from expanding beyond its borders. They have huge amounts of revenue above their cost, where it would have been natural for them to say, hey, we're done with our city. Let's just get the next surrounding 5 cities around us next, and let's just keep spreading on out until we're done. They can't do that legally in Chattanooga, but you could do that in California if you have one successful major city build out this infrastructure, like Long Beach, California, for example. They can just start going to the rest of Los Angeles County, right? You plan a couple of successful models in rural California and like in the Central California area, then they will just keep expanding their networks, because when you're not driven by maximizing profits at all times, you free yourself to think about how do I have a sustainable revenue source to keep paying for my debt, to keep expanding my network until you get to Universal.
Is there a reason you said Long Beach? Is there something I should know
They're
about? I just asked. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, okay, because that's near me.
Oh, well,
that's close to me. I'm in San Pedro.
Shoot me an email, because there's lots of interest there. I think every city in particular has gone through this pandemic and said, you know what, given our students a really inferior mobile hotspot is not a solution. We have to have a solution for this. And in rural California particularly, it's even higher, only because one, they lack a lot of this opportunity. Two, they had the largest national bankruptcy in recent times with Frontier Communications. So their private monopoly, slow internet option, has gone bankrupt and has gone through restructuring. So that kind of put the fear of like, wait, if the private option goes down and we have nothing, what are we doing? And so there's a pretty concerted effort from the rural counties to say, let's just build it ourselves. Forget this. Like, there's no reason to wait. Mm-hmm. But
they're so often underserved.
Yeah.
And they're underserved for no reason other than just, well, we don't want to bother with this because we don't feel like we'll like our bottom line enough. That's what the big cable. It's not like, oh, the terrain or that. No, they can build there. They choose not to. It's a conscious choice because they don't care. And yeah, that's interesting about Long Beach. I got to email you about that. That's good to know.
They're pretty far ahead in terms of like talking about it and the activism there. And EFF does a lot of local campaigns, and California's our home state. So any city and any community that's active, we hear from activists and local activists on the ground, and we're always happy to help. And I have pretty high hopes about the Los Angeles County area in particular.
That's great. I mean, yeah, I live in San Pedro, which is technically part of Los Angeles proper, although at one point it was its own city. And some folks wonder why we're not, given our location. But either way, we're technically part of Los Angeles proper. So, I presented to some neighborhood councils on municipal broadband, but it's a little foggy, like what all we would need LA proper to get on board with versus what we could do ourselves. But it sounds like, just going on that, if this fiber network were to be built out, we could form, like hypothetically, our own neighborhood cooperatives to then connect residencies. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. And you'd have a long-term financing vehicle to, essentially a mortgage vehicle or like a car loan vehicle that you can access. You can, as long as you pass like kind of the requisite steps to apply for the money. And if the state's building out an open access middle mile fiber network, you would just need to figure out where that network is located from you to know what you have to connect to in order to deliver the local network.
And that's where we would need some of the contractor help, where you could contact the Institute of Local Self-Reliance. They would be able to help with that, correct?
Yeah, and I would envision the state will make it very public where they're building the network, so that you can just look up locations and just say, oh, it's like 6 blocks this way or 6 miles this way. The idea would be to make it accessible in a way that you can develop those local solutions and have, so you don't have to, going back to the road analogy, it is very hard if you have to build the freeway and the local road at the same time to build out your network. But if you just have to do the local road and the state's showing you where the on-ramp is, then you just have to figure out how do I get to the on-ramp and bring the connection from the bandwidth from there to here. And then whatever you want to devise locally is your solution. A great local story in California that happening is out in Dillon Beach, California, a very tiny little township. Basically, a dad had his daughter not able to do her homework because she lacked internet access. They only had their mobile phones. And he kind of chased around the AT&T utility truck until he found out where their tower was. and convinced him for him to pay, I think it was like $12,000 to run a fiber line from the tower to his garage. But essentially, once he had the capacity right there, then he
that
just
is
started.
Parent of the Year right there.
Yeah, it is. It
That
is.
guy should get.
Most of us don't have that, right? But it just kind of shows, like, if you have a community that has the ability to go to a local connection and pay for the connection to get to you, you've opened up the door to do anything. And so, they do 250 down, 100, I think, up wireless mesh networking from that garage into this tiny little township. But that's only feasible because there's a fiber line that got to you. And that's the goal of the state here, is bring it to every community, bring it close, and then allow you to develop what your local solution is. Is it fiber to every single household? Is it wireless first and then eventually fiber, over the years? It's up to the local groups, right? It's up to the local communities to decide how they want to approach it.
That is amazing. So, and also, just to be clear here, so I'm not missing anything. Not only would we be able to make that decision, but we would also be able to apply for money to do it. Like, the state would give us money to do it. Like, say I'm in San Pedro, we decide we want to do fiber to the home. The existing fiber is there. We just have to connect ourselves to the network that is now available because of the state. We can apply for the money to do that for all of San Pedro. And once it gets approved, we pay for it, and then residents are having an internet bill that's half the cost of what they're paying now, and it's a heck of a lot better. Is that all correct?
And it's two sources of money, to be clear. One's a loan, so you have to pay it back, but it appropriately structured over a very long period of time. On your average city, you're probably talking about some small fee per month for 20, 30 years. But are you not going to use broadband? I guess is the kind of the fundamental question there, and the answer is you're going to use it your whole life, and it's going to be a lot cheaper overall than what you're paying for cable, right? So there's the loan piece, and then there's a grant program that would be for like the most difficult, expensive parts of the network. So you cobble that together, you would figure out what your local debt would be, and the successful models are going to be the ones where your monthly collection of bills will be much lower than your cable option and sufficiently high enough to pay that debt. You stretch the debt long enough. This is how we afford houses and cars and stuff. I mean,
right.
No one buys this stuff because they have all the money up front. It's because you have a financial vehicle that is designed around stretching out your costs over a long period of time, so you can rationalize how you pay that back.
This is, I mean, I feel like we just made the world's most organic commercial. Just, you know what I mean? Like, just by talking through this, because this is an amazing opportunity. And this is something, if California, and I know not everyone lives in California, if California does this, the rest of the country is going to follow suit. Because, it's one thing, and I'm not trying to disparage places like Chattanooga, Tennessee or Utah or anything like that. But it's one thing when these random nooks and crannies have this special thing that a lot of the public just isn't aware of. Like a lot of people don't know Chattanooga, Tennessee has that. A lot of people don't know that about Utah, or they don't know about Sandy, Oregon, or Charlemont, Massachusetts. These are small places. But if California gets this amazing statewide thing, every state's going to, because we'll be leading the way in the world. I mean, it will be up there, not just in the country, but in the world if this goes through. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and in particular for our cities. The thing is, New York City, San Francisco, California, or Los Angeles, Oakland, we have global cities in the sense of the amount of people that live there, how close they live to each other, the amount of businesses and high-income people, and kind of the whole smattering of a community that live in those places. The ingredients are all there to have equivalent internet connectivity as Seoul, South Korea. We don't, because of the over-reliance on the big national players to do this. And they decide, what's the way I make the most money with a short-term investment structure, which is not synonymous at all with a ubiquitous 21st century affordable deployment. For affordable access deployment. It's not, and those will never merge. I mean, I think that's the best part of what Governor Newsom is proposing here, is no longer relying on the same players who just have given us what we have. We're not going to see much of a difference from them in terms of their kind of isolated targeting and where they build and more importantly, where they don't build. But rather tap into forces that are just more willing to tackle what is a generational challenge. And if successful, we'll have solved the digital divide issue for 1 or 2 generations at least.
How do you all at the EFF not just walk around every day, like just yelling at people in the street? Like, do you know how good we could have it?
Yeah,
Do you know what we could have right now? Just here. Sit down. Sit down. I gotta tell you about this. It's probably good you don't do that, but
it does feel that way simply because so like here are some things I think policymakers and even just your average internet user may not realize. We have solved the issue of capacity and speeds for a while now, and so the question, like, the industry has been very good at teaching the media and the politician side of this equation of like higher speeds means too expensive, and therefore lower the bar, lower the threshold what you want to subsidize, which has led to what we have today, right? So we the federal definition of broadband since 2015 is 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up. No one uses the internet at that speed today at all. Yet that is the metric we decide where we subsidize, what we subsidize, how much money we spend to build that speed, that really low inferior speed, rather than the one state that didn't do this is North Dakota, of all places. Kind of picking random places. They have no national carriers. There's no AT&T there. There's no Frontier Communications there. It's all local public and local private players, and they're 2/3 fiber to the home today. Mm-hmm. And so every subsidy dollar that came in, every federal grant, every free dollar from the government that came in, rather than just plus up the old wire to give you a little bit better speed and it's a little bit just to meet that bare minimum threshold, they're just like, let's just put in fiber. And you aggregate that over 15, 20 years, and you get to where they're at today, which is they're almost done, right? They're almost done at ubiquitous fiber for a very rural state of 600,000 people. And there's just no justification for Los Angeles and San Francisco in particular to not have far exceeded that type of metric. You have so many people in one place, so much money that could be made, but not an aggressive effort from a regulatory or a public investment standpoint to just bring about that result. I mean, note real quick, I studied South Korea for EFF. Part of my work here is to do a lot of research, and South Korea didn't just spontaneously happen to where they did. It was like 5 different national plans, all focused on infrastructure, all focused on how to build it out and implementing them. And California hasn't had a plan until today, until this.
I think what would help, every trivia show in the country, everything from just pub trivia to Jeopardy and everything in between, they just need to have that question. Hey, where's the best internet in the United States? And it'll be multiple choice. And almost everyone will say, Tennessee and North Dakota? Yeah, I'm not picking that. And then when they find out that's the right frickin' answer, there's going to be a lot of Google searches. And so people are going to be like, wow, this is also another fun fact about North Dakota to connect a couple issues here. Who has one of the most successful public banks, or arguably the most successful public bank in the country? North Dakota. Interesting how all that connects. No pun intended. So let's get back to California specifically. Yeah. What can people do to try to move this forward? What kind of calls to action exist right now where they can either press your legislators or get involved locally? Like what is out there?
So real simple. If you go to EFF.org and you go to our action center, it's at the top. The top link there. We have a running call for people to contact their state legislator, your assembly member, and your senator, and just say, I support the Newsom plan and I want it passed. They know what that means, right? There's no real confusion there. You don't have to define or explain any more detail than that. And that is like the most concrete step anyone can do right now is simply just inform their local elected what they want. And I think we're looking at a decision point being as close as 2 weeks from now. The fight's still ongoing right now in Sacramento. It's really a live, hot issue right now. And so every California viewer you have right now, they can take the time to call their local elected, one assembly member, one senator, just get them on the phone and say, hey, I support Newsom's broadband plan to have the state invest a lot in public infrastructure for broadband. That's it. That's all I really need. And if enough people do that, my job gets real easy in Sacramento to get us across the finish line.
So what happens if they don't act on it in the next 2 weeks? Is it then just sort of dead in the water?
Keep dragging. There's no deadline for actually doing anything with the money, and that's the danger here. Is and we identified that is if we don't act now, the danger is the longer you take to finally approve the construction effort, The federal dollar part of this equation has a timeline, has a deadline. So Congress gave us rescue money to rescue people, right? Like it isn't like money we just get to sit on and do nothing with. So if we don't actually start putting that money out to build stuff within I would say the next 2 or 3 months, there's a real risk we'll have to give it back to the federal government, and then we're just stuck with the state surplus, which there's a decent amount of money there. But if you go from 7 billion to like 4 billion or less, then you start introducing scarcity when you never had to, and then you start introducing choices that limit what you can actually do with that money. At $7 billion, we are really talking about getting pretty much you can get fiber to everyone within a 10-year time frame, as long as all the local communities really engage on accessing and building. With less money, then you're talking about a very much longer time frame of when you can get to that finish point. There's nothing but tragedy, if that ends up being the result. But that is clearly a strategy of the carriers is if AT&T and cable can stall the legislature and keep stalling them and not get them to actually prove to how that money gets spent, you risk forfeiting some portion of it, which then limits the impact of what the public sector is going to be able to do here at the end of the day.
So you heard it here, folks. Go to EFF.org/action, right? That's the full URL.
Mm-hmm.
EFF.org/action. If you're a California residents, contact your legislative reps, contact your state senators, and demand this. And we're on a timeline. It'd be great. I say the sooner the better. I say let's get it the next 2 weeks. Let's get them to act on it. Is there any? So is the only big form of resistance big cable? Is that just the main thing that's trying to stall this?
Cable is definitely the biggest opponent, simply because just they have the most at stake, to be honest. AT&T is also an opponent of at least the state government building out the infrastructure, and I think that boils down to just the fact that if the state gets kind of comfortable doing this, right, then it's going to do more and help people in more ways that then they can't be the one choice for lots of things. But they're a little different in that a lot of their features in wireless, and wireless actually benefits from more fiber being in more places. So they're going to be opposed to the idea of the government being more involved, but certainly not at the level or tenor as cable. Because for cable, it's essentially holy war.
Ernesto, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for unpacking this and clarifying some of the stuff around this proposal. I've been talking about it a lot on the show. And by the way, I got to do a quick side note here, man. There's been some people in the chat. I do feel like digital rights is a very underreported thing, and there should be more content around it. Somebody brought up Placone and Falcon. I mean, as the name of a podcast, that sells itself. I don't know. Maybe we can chat about this later. I mean, I can't disagree. That does sell itself. I mean, wouldn't you be curious? Placone and Falcon, or Falcon and Placone. We can go alphabetical. F before P. That makes sense. We might be onto something. Just saying. But thank you for all you do. I love the work over at EFF, and thank you so much for staying on top of this issue and for educating us on it today. Everybody, all California residents, EFF.org/action. Get on the phone with those reps. I know I've emailed mine already. I will do it again because this is such an opportunity. This is just such an amazing opportunity to close the digital divide and to make the internet a true utility in our lives, which it is. I think in many ways this is similar to the struggle for electricity that happened generations ago. I mean, it's not that different, and hopefully we win this one.
Yep. Well, we won that fight, so
we did.
This is our fight in our generation. So,
thank you for joining me, Ernesto. Everyone, check it out, EFF.org/action, and I hope come back again soon to so we can continue this story. We'll continue it as it unfolds.
Well, I hope to have good news the next time we talk.
Absolutely. Cheers, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Ernesto Falcon. And you guys know I've been wanting to really take a deep dive. And we got our deep dive. We got our deep dive on it. And how amazing is it that this is a thing? Like, we could just have this amazing thing. We could have this amazing thing. They build the infrastructure. You can connect to it. We can have this. But, I mean, I guess our state government's just thinking, well, but have we considered just doing nothing? Have we thought about that? Isn't that amazing? I mean, this is one of those moments. Everybody watching right now should just be like, why is this even Why do they even need to talk about this? How is it not? We're just doing this now. Why is it? But we know why. I mean, we know why. Let me find the website here. I gotta bring up somebody's pet. That's how we end. Let me find the link. So we'll bring up somebody's pet to give a pet shout out before we sign off here for the day. And good to be back, everybody. I have missed this. I always miss it when I'm away. And let's find a pet, shall we? Let's see who's up. That one's done. That one's. Oh, Jay, what's up, buddy? Jay. Oh wait, no, Jay, you're done too. Sorry. There we go. Chris, you're up, buddy. There's Chris. What's up, Chris Scott? Pumpkin and Swoosh. I'm not sure if they're cats or dogs. There's no picture of Pumpkin and Punkin. Ooh, that's. Now we'll all have to wonder, is that an actual name or is the name Pumpkin and Chris made a typo? Either way, I think it's cool. But we'll go with Punkin. Punkin and Swoosh. They might be cats. They might be dogs. They might be rabbits. Maybe they say ribbit to Lucy and she says meow. And I don't know, Lucy would probably just chase a rabbit and not be able to catch it. Probably, right? That's what a cat would do with a rabbit. Maybe some cats could catch a rabbit, but Lucy would not. And that's not a slight. It's just she would. But Pumpkin and Swoosh, they say woof, meow, ribbit, quack. They might be ducks. Mighty ducks, maybe. They say something. I don't know what kind of animal they are, but they say appropriate animal noise. And Lucy says meow, and she says hello to Pumpkin and Swoosh. And Chris says peace, and I say peace. And you know what else I say? I say peace. I say love. I say mutual aid. I say general strike. I say go to EFF.org/action and contact those reps because this is a huge opportunity for California. This is seriously an opportunity to revolutionize broadband and make the internet a utility in our lives once and for all, for generations. Yeah, that's a big deal. That's a pretty big deal. All right. We will. Oh, so today's this week's schedule is a little weird. My next episode is going to be Friday. I know we got a weird start this week, so this week's going to be a little weird. My next episode is going to be Friday with the rapper/activist Awkward, and we're going to be talking about a general strike. So tomorrow there's not going to be a regular Get Your News On with Ron, and then Thursday typically our schedule is Monday through Wednesday. Sometimes, depending on different things going on, that schedule gets altered. This week is one of those times. We missed Monday. Our next episode will be Friday. But in the meantime, you know the drill. And again, I'll go through it again. Pumpkin and Swoosh say animal appropriate sounds. They might say wolf. They might say meow. I'm not sure. Lucy says meow and hello to them. Chris says peace. I say peace. And I say EFF.org/action. Do it. I will see you all on Friday. Peace.